The morning started like any other dream wedding day should. Lisa woke up at 6 in the morning, her heart racing with excitement as she looked out the window of the old farmhouse. Today was supposed to be the day she had been planning for 8 months. Every detail had been carefully thought out, from the white roses that would line the aisle to the string quartet that would play as she walked down to meet her future husband. But as Lisa pulled back the curtains, her stomach dropped. Dark clouds were gathering on the horizon, and the wind was picking up in a way that made the old oak trees sway dangerously. The weather forecast had mentioned a chance of light rain, but this looked like something much more serious. She quickly grabbed her phone and checked the weather app. Her hands started shaking as she read the words "Severe Thunderstorm Warning" and "Flash Flood Watch." The wedding venue was perfect for their outdoor ceremony. It sat right beside Willow Creek, a gentle stream that usually babbled peacefully through the Texas countryside. Lisa had fallen in love with the location the moment she saw it. The old farmhouse had been converted into a charming bed and breakfast, and the owner had agreed to let them use the sprawling meadow for their ceremony. 150 guests were supposed to arrive at 4 o'clock that afternoon. By 9 in the morning, the first drops of rain started falling. Lisa tried to stay positive as she sat in the bridal suite, surrounded by her bridesmaids who were all trying to keep the mood light. Her sister Jenny was doing her best to crack jokes, while her best friend from college was busy steaming the wrinkles out of Lisa's dress. The photographer arrived right on schedule, ready to capture what was supposed to be the happiest day of Lisa's life. But as the hours passed, the rain got heavier. By noon, it wasn't just raining anymore. Water was coming down in sheets so thick that you couldn't see more than a few feet in front of you. The string quartet called to say they couldn't make it because several roads were already flooded. The caterer was worried about getting their truck through the rising water. Lisa's stomach churned as she watched her perfect day slowly falling apart. The creek that had been so peaceful and romantic during their engagement photos was now a raging river. The water was brown and angry, carrying fallen branches and debris as it rushed past the farmhouse. Lisa stood at the window in her silk robe, watching the water level rise higher and higher. What had been a gentle stream just hours before was now 20 feet wide and growing by the minute. By 2 o'clock, the situation had become dangerous. The wedding coordinator, a woman who had planned hundreds of weddings over the years, made the difficult decision to cancel the ceremony. She called Lisa's fiancé, David, who was getting ready at a hotel 20 miles away. David was furious about the cancellation, but he agreed it was the only safe choice. The coordinator started making calls to cancel vendors and notify guests. But many people had already decided not to risk the drive. Lisa felt like her world was crumbling. She had dreamed of this day since she was a little girl playing dress-up in her mother's closet. Everything had been planned to perfection. The flowers, the music, the food, even the little details like the handwritten place cards that had taken her weeks to finish. Now it was all being washed away by the storm. Her bridesmaids tried to cheer her up, suggesting they could reschedule for the following weekend. But Lisa knew it wouldn't be the same. She had taken time off work. Her elderly grandparents had traveled from out of state, and all the vendors had other bookings. The thought of starting over with all the planning made her feel exhausted before she even began. As the afternoon wore on, the situation got worse instead of better. The creek had become a river, and the river was now threatening to overflow its banks. Lisa watched from her window as the water crept closer and closer to the farmhouse. The owner of the bed and breakfast, an elderly man named Mr. Peterson, came upstairs to check on her. His face was pale with worry. "Miss, I think we need to talk about getting you out of here," he said gently. "The water's rising faster than I've ever seen it. The main road is already underwater, and the back road might be next." Lisa felt panic rising in her chest. She had sent her bridesmaids home earlier when it became clear the wedding was canceled. Her parents had tried to come get her, but they couldn't make it through the flooded roads. She was alone in her wedding dress, watching her dreams wash away with the rising water. The power went out at 4 o'clock, exactly when the ceremony was supposed to start. Lisa sat in the dim light of the bridal suite, still in her beautiful white dress that she had saved for months to buy. The silence was broken only by the sound of rain pounding on the roof and the frightening rush of water outside. She tried calling David, but her phone had no signal. The landline was dead too. Mr. Peterson came back upstairs with a flashlight and a worried expression. "Miss, I hate to tell you this, but the water's reached the porch. We're completely cut off now. The bridge to the main road is underwater, and my truck won't make it through what's left of the back road." Lisa felt her breathing become shallow. She was trapped. The romantic creekside location that had seemed so perfect was now a dangerous flood zone. Through the window she could see debris floating past in the swift current. Tree branches, pieces of fence, even what looked like someone's mailbox were being carried away by the rushing water. The reality of her situation hit her like a physical blow. She wasn't just dealing with a canceled wedding anymore. She was in real danger. The water was still rising, and there was no way for rescue crews to reach the farmhouse. Her cell phone was useless, and she had no way to contact anyone for help. As evening approached, Lisa found herself alone in the farmhouse with just Mr. Peterson, who was too old to be of much help in an emergency. The water had reached the first step of the porch, and it showed no signs of stopping. She changed out of her wedding dress and into a pair of jeans and a sweater. She had packed for the honeymoon trip she wouldn't be taking. Standing at the window as darkness fell, Lisa realized that this was the most frightening experience of her life. She had always been someone who planned everything carefully, who liked to be in control of her situation. But now she was completely helpless, at the mercy of a storm that seemed to have no intention of stopping. Little did she know that just a few miles away, a cowboy named Jake was finishing up his work for the day, completely unaware that his life was about to change forever. As Lisa watched the water continue to rise in the darkness, she had no idea that her real love story was just beginning. The night seemed to go on forever. Lisa sat by the window, watching the water creep higher and higher up the porch steps. Every few minutes, she would shine her flashlight outside to check the water level. Each time, her heart sank a little more. The creek had completely disappeared, replaced by an angry river that seemed to stretch as far as she could see in the darkness. Mr. Peterson had fallen asleep in his chair downstairs, exhausted from worrying about the situation. Lisa didn't blame him. The poor man had done everything he could, but there was nothing anyone could do now except wait and hope the rain would stop. She pulled a blanket around her shoulders and tried to stay calm, but fear kept creeping into her thoughts. What if the water kept rising? What if it reached the second floor? What if the old farmhouse couldn't handle the pressure of all that water rushing around it? Lisa had never been in a flood before, and she had no idea what to expect. Every sound made her jump. Every creak of the old wooden house made her wonder if the building was starting to give way. Around midnight, the rain finally started to lighten up. Lisa felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe the worst was over. Maybe the water would start going down soon. But as the hours passed, she realized that even though the rain had stopped, the water wasn't going anywhere. If anything, it seemed to be getting deeper as more water rushed down from the hills upstream. By morning, Lisa was exhausted but too scared to sleep. She had spent the night watching the water and praying for help to come. The sun came up behind thick gray clouds, giving everything an eerie, dim look. When she looked outside, Lisa couldn't believe what she saw. The peaceful meadow where she was supposed to get married was now a lake. The only things sticking up above the water were the tops of fence posts and the highest branches of trees. The water had reached the top of the porch steps sometime during the night. Lisa realized with growing panic that they were now completely surrounded. The farmhouse had become an island in the middle of a flood. She tried her phone again, but there was still no signal. She felt more alone than she had ever felt in her life. Meanwhile, about 3 miles away, Jake Thompson was starting his morning just like he had every day for the past 15 years. The 34-year-old rancher had been through plenty of storms in his time, but this one had been different. The rain had been heavier than anything he remembered, and he was worried about his cattle. He had spent most of the night moving his animals to higher ground. And now he needed to check on his neighbors. Jake had always been the kind of person who looked out for others. When he was growing up, his father had taught him that being a good neighbor meant helping people when they needed it most. Living out in the country, neighbors depended on each other during tough times. Jake had helped pull cars out of ditches, fixed broken fences after storms, and even helped search for lost pets. As Jake saddled up his horse Storm, he could see that the flooding was worse than he had first thought. The low-lying areas of his ranch were underwater, and he knew that meant the creek areas would be in real trouble. He decided to ride over toward the old Peterson place to make sure the elderly man was okay. He had heard there was supposed to be a wedding there the day before, and he wondered if anyone had gotten caught in the flood. Storm was a reliable horse, who had been through many adventures with Jake. The big brown gelding was sure-footed and calm, exactly the kind of horse you wanted in a dangerous situation. As they made their way toward the creek, Jake was shocked by what he saw. The gentle stream he had known since childhood was now a raging river that had swallowed up everything. In its path, Jake guided Storm carefully through the floodwater, staying on the higher ground where he could. The water was moving fast and carrying all kinds of debris. He saw pieces of buildings, fence posts, and even what looked like part of someone's roof floating past. The power of the flood was incredible and frightening. As they got closer to the Peterson place, Jake could see the old farmhouse rising out of the water like a ship in a storm. At first, he thought it was empty. Then he saw movement in one of the upstairs windows. Someone was up there, and they were waving frantically at him. Jake's heart started racing. Someone was trapped in that house, and from the looks of it, they were in serious danger. The water was still rising, and the old farmhouse wasn't built to handle this kind of flooding. He had to do something fast. He rode Storm as close as he could get to the house, but the water was too deep and the current too strong to get right up to the building. Jake could see a young woman in the upstairs window. She was waving a white cloth and pointing down at the water. Even from a distance, he could see the fear on her face. Jake had been in plenty of tough situations before, but this was different. This was about saving someone's life. He looked around quickly, trying to figure out the best way to reach her. The front porch was underwater, but there was a big oak tree near the side of the house. If he could get his rope around one of the branches, he might be able to create a way for her to get down. Jake always carried a lasso on his saddle. It was part of his daily equipment for working with cattle, but today it was going to be used for something much more important. He took the rope and started swinging it, aiming for a strong branch on the oak tree. It took him 3 tries, but finally the rope caught and held up in the window. Lisa watched this stranger on horseback trying to help her. She didn't know who he was, but she had never been so happy to see another person in her life. When she saw him throw the rope up to the tree, she realized he was trying to create a way for her to escape from the house. Jake tied the other end of the rope to his saddle horn and tested it to make sure it would hold. Then he guided Storm through the water until he was directly under the window. The water was up to the horse's chest, and Jake could feel the strong current trying to push them away from the house. "Ma'am," Jake called up to the window, "I'm going to get you out of there. Do you think you can climb down this rope?" Lisa looked down at the rushing water below and felt her stomach turn. She had never been particularly brave about heights, and the idea of climbing down a rope into floodwater terrified her. But she knew she didn't have a choice. The water was still rising, and this might be her only chance to get out safely. "I don't know if I can do it," she called back down to him. Jake could hear the fear in her voice. He knew he had to stay calm and help her feel confident about the rescue. "You can do this," he shouted back. "I'll be right here to catch you if you fall. Just take it slow and don't look down at the water. Look at me instead." Lisa took a deep breath and started to climb out of the window. Her hands were shaking as she grabbed the rope, but something about the steady voice of the cowboy below gave her courage. She didn't know his name, but she trusted him completely. As she started to lower herself down the rope, she knew her life was in his hands. Lisa's hands burned as she gripped the rope, lowering herself inch by inch toward the rushing water below. Her whole body was shaking, but she forced herself to keep going. The cowboy on the horse stayed right below her, talking to her in a calm, steady voice that somehow made her feel like everything was going to be okay. "That's it. Just a little bit more," Jake called up to her. "You're doing great. Don't look at the water, just look at me." When Lisa was about halfway down, her foot slipped on the wet rope and she swung sideways. For a terrifying moment, she thought she was going to fall into the rushing flood. But Jake was ready. He reached out and caught her with one strong arm, pulling her safely onto Storm's back behind him. "I've got you," he said quietly. "You're safe now." Lisa wrapped her arms around Jake's waist and held on tight as he guided Storm through the floodwater. She was soaked and shivering, but she felt an overwhelming sense of relief. This stranger had just risked his own life to save her, and she didn't even know his name. The ride to Jake's ranch took about 20 minutes, with Storm carefully picking his way through the safest parts of the flood. Jake kept checking the make. Sure, Lisa was okay, and she was amazed by how gentle he was. His voice was deep and quiet, and there was something about the way he spoke that made her feel calm for the first time in hours. "What's your name?" Jake asked as they rode. "Lisa," she replied, her voice muffled against his back. "Lisa Cooper." "I was supposed to get married yesterday." Jake felt a pang of sympathy. He had wondered about the wedding when he saw the decorations being set up earlier in the week. "I'm Jake Thompson. I live on the ranch next door. I'm really sorry about your wedding day." Lisa didn't know what to say. 24 hours ago, she had been worried about flowers and music and whether her dress would fit right. Now she was clinging to a cowboy she had never met, grateful just to be alive. It felt like her whole world had been turned upside down. When they finally reached Jake's ranch, Lisa was surprised by what she saw. The property sat on higher ground, so it had escaped the worst of the flooding. The house was a simple log cabin, with a wraparound porch surrounded by rolling hills where cattle grazed peacefully. It looked like something out of a country magazine, rustic but well-maintained. Jake helped Lisa down from Storm and led her up to the porch. "Let's get you inside where it's warm," he said. "You must be freezing." The inside of Jake's cabin was nothing like Lisa had expected. She had pictured a typical bachelor pad, messy and uncomfortable. Instead, she found a cozy home with handmade wooden furniture, colorful quilts, and the warm smell of coffee lingering in the air. Everything was clean and organized, but it felt lived in and welcoming. "The bathroom is down the hall if you want to get cleaned up," Jake said. "I'll find you some dry clothes." Lisa looked down at herself and realized she was still wearing the jeans and sweater she had changed into the night before, but they were soaked and muddy from the rescue. She must have looked terrible, but Jake didn't seem to notice or care. He was already moving around the cabin, gathering towels and clothes for her. When Lisa came out of the bathroom wearing Jake's spare clothes, she felt almost human again. The clothes were way too big for her, but they were warm and dry. Jake had started a fire in the stone fireplace, and the whole room felt cozy and safe. "I made some soup," Jake said, ladling hot vegetable soup into a bowl. "It's nothing fancy, but it should warm you up." Lisa sat at Jake's wooden kitchen table and ate the soup gratefully. It was simple but delicious, and she realized she hadn't eaten anything since the morning before. As she ate, Jake busied himself making coffee and giving her space to process everything that had happened. "I should call my family," Lisa said suddenly. "They must be worried sick about me." Jake handed her his landline phone. "The cell towers are probably down, but this should work." Lisa called her parents first, and she could hear the relief in her mother's voice when she answered. Her parents had been trying to reach her all night, but they couldn't get through the flooded roads to help her. They had been imagining the worst possible scenarios. "I'm okay, Mom," Lisa said. "A neighbor rescued me. I'm safe at his ranch." Next, she called David, her fiancé. But when David answered the phone, Lisa was shocked by his response. Instead of relief that she was safe, he seemed annoyed that she hadn't called sooner. He complained about all the money they had lost on the wedding and started talking about rescheduling as if nothing traumatic had happened. "Well, at least you're okay," David said, but he sounded distracted. "I'm actually glad the wedding got canceled." I've been having second thoughts anyway. This whole thing has been way too stressful. Lisa felt like she had been punched in the stomach. She had just survived a terrifying flood, and her fiancé was telling her he was glad their wedding had been canceled. She hung up the phone in a daze, not sure what to think or feel. Jake had been trying not to listen to her phone calls, but he couldn't help but notice that Lisa looked upset after talking to her fiancé. He didn't say anything, but he made her a cup of coffee and sat down across from her at the table. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. Lisa looked at this cowboy who had risked his life to save her, who had welcomed her into his home and taken care of her without asking for anything in return. Then she thought about David, who couldn't even be bothered to worry about her safety. The contrast was so stark that it made her question everything about her relationship. "I don't know," Lisa said. "Honestly, I thought I knew what I wanted, but now I'm not sure about anything," Jake nodded as if he understood. "Sometimes it takes a crisis to show us what really matters," he said. "And what doesn't?" As the day wore on, Lisa found herself telling Jake things she had never told anyone else. She talked about how she had been feeling trapped in her relationship with David, how he made all the decisions and never really listened to her opinions. She told him about her job as a teacher and how much she loved working with kids, something David had always dismissed as unimportant. Jake was a good listener. He didn't try to give her advice or tell her what to do. He just listened and asked thoughtful questions that helped her think through her feelings. Lisa was surprised by how easy it was to talk to him. With David, she always felt like she had to be perfect and never say anything that might upset him. "What about you?" Lisa asked. "Have you ever been married?" Jake's expression grew sad. "I was married for 5 years," he said. "But my ex-wife decided she wanted a different kind of life. City life?" She said living on a ranch was too boring and isolated. The divorce was final 2 years ago. Lisa could hear the pain in his voice. But she was also struck by how differently he talked about his failed marriage compared to how David talked about their relationship. Jake spoke with respect for his ex-wife, even though she had hurt him. David always seemed to be criticizing Lisa or making her feel like she wasn't good enough. As evening approached, Lisa realized she felt more at peace than she had in months. The flood had been terrifying, but somehow sitting in Jake's cozy cabin, she felt like she could breathe freely for the first time in a long time. She wasn't sure what that meant or what she was going to do about it, but she knew something important had shifted inside her heart. The next morning, Lisa woke up on Jake's couch feeling more rested than she had in weeks. She had slept better in this simple cabin than she had in her own bed back home. The morning sun was streaming through the windows, and she could hear Jake moving around quietly in the kitchen, trying not to wake her. "Good morning," Jake said when he saw her sitting up. "I made coffee. How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in months," Lisa admitted, surprised by her own honesty. "Thank you for letting me stay here." Jake poured her a cup of coffee and sat down in the chair across from her. "You're welcome to stay as long as you need to. The roads are still flooded, so you're not going anywhere for a while anyway." Lisa looked out the window at the peaceful ranch. In the distance, she could see Storm and Jake's other horses grazing in a field. The flooding seemed like a different world from here. Everything was calm and quiet, so different from the chaos of the past few days. "I should probably try to figure out what to do next," Lisa said, though she wasn't sure where to start. Her whole life felt like it had been turned upside down. "There's no rush," Jake said gently. "Sometimes the best thing to do is just take things one day at a time." Lisa spent the morning helping Jake with small tasks around the ranch. She had never done farm work before, but Jake was patient and showed her how to feed the chickens and collect eggs. She was surprised by how satisfying it felt to do simple, practical work with her hands. "You're a natural at this," Jake said as Lisa scattered grain for the chickens. "Have you ever lived on a farm before?" "Never," Lisa laughed. "I grew up in the suburbs, but I always loved visiting my grandmother's farm when I was little. She had chickens too, and I used to help her collect eggs." Jake smiled. "It's funny how some things stick with us even when we think we've forgotten them." As they worked together, Lisa found herself watching Jake carefully. He moved with quiet confidence, never rushing but always getting things done efficiently. He was gentle with the animals and seemed to know exactly what each one needed. There was something deeply attractive about a man who was so comfortable with himself and his surroundings. Around noon, they heard a car pulling up the driveway. Lisa looked up to see a familiar silver sedan and her heart sank. It was David? And he looked angry. Who is that? Jake asked, though he could probably guess from Lisa's expression. My fiancé, Lisa said quietly. Well, I guess he's still my fiancé. David got out of the car wearing an expensive suit that looked completely out of place on the ranch. He marched up to where Lisa and Jake were standing by the chicken coop, his face red with anger. Lisa, what the hell is going on? David demanded. I've been calling you all morning. Why haven't you been answering your phone? I don't have my phone, Lisa said, feeling defensive. It got wet in the flood and I lost the signal anyway. David looked around the ranch with obvious distaste. Well, come on, let's get out of here. I've wasted enough time on this whole mess. Jake stepped forward slightly, not in a threatening way, but protectively. Sir, I think Lisa can make her own decisions about when she's ready to leave. David glared at Jake. And who are you exactly? Some kind of cowboy wannabe? I'm Jake Thompson. I own this ranch, and I'm the one who pulled your fiancée out of that flood when she was trapped. For a moment, David looked embarrassed. Well, thank you for that, he said stiffly. But I can take care of Lisa now. She doesn't need to stay here anymore. Lisa felt something snap inside her. David hadn't even asked if she was okay or if she had been scared. He was treating her like a piece of property that he needed to collect and take home. Actually, David, I think I do need to. Stay here, Lisa said, her voice stronger than she felt. At least for a few more days. I need time to think about some things. David's face turned even redder. Think about what? Lisa, you're being ridiculous. We have a wedding to reschedule, and people are asking questions. You can't just hide out here on some farm. It's not hiding, Lisa said. It's trying to figure out what I really want. What you want, David scoffed. You want to get married. We've been planning this for months. You picked out the dress, you chose the flowers, you sent out the invitations. You picked out the dress, Lisa said quietly. You chose the flowers. You decided on the venue. I went along with what you wanted because I thought that's what couples did. Jake could see that this was getting heated and he didn't want to make things worse for Lisa. Maybe you two should talk about this privately, he said. I'll be in the barn if you need anything, Lisa. As Jake walked away, Lisa felt a moment of panic. She wanted him to stay, but she knew this was a conversation she needed to have with David alone. Lisa, what's gotten into you? David asked once. Jake was gone. You're acting like a completely different person. Maybe I am, Lisa said. Maybe almost dying in a flood changes your perspective on things. David rolled his eyes. You weren't going to die. You were just stuck in a house for one night. Don't be so dramatic. Lisa stared at him in disbelief. Dramatic? David, I was trapped in a flooded house with the water rising. I was terrified. And when I called you yesterday, you said you were glad the wedding was canceled. I was just stressed, David said impatiently. Look, we can talk about this later. Right now, I need you to come home so we can start dealing with this mess. No, Lisa said firmly. I'm not ready to come home yet. What do you mean, no? David's voice was getting louder. Lisa, you're my fiancé. You don't get to just decide to stay on some stranger's ranch. He's not a stranger, Lisa said. He saved my life. And he's been kinder to me in 2 days than you've been in 2 years. David's expression turned ugly. So that's what this is about? You're having some kind of fantasy about this, Cowboy? Lisa, this is real life, not some romance novel. You're right, Lisa said, pulling the engagement ring off her finger. This is real life. And in real life, I shouldn't have to beg my fiancé to care about whether I'm okay after a traumatic experience. David stared at the ring in her outstretched hand. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious, Lisa said. I've been trying to convince myself that we were right for each other, but we're not. We want different things. We have different values. And I don't think either of us has been truly happy. David snatched the ring from her hand. Fine, but don't come crying to me when you realize you've made a huge mistake. You're giving up a good life for some fantasy. Maybe, Lisa said, but at least it will be my choice. David got back in his car and drove away without another word. Lisa stood in the driveway for a long time, watching the dust settle. She felt scared and relieved and free all at the same time. Jake appeared beside her, having obviously been watching from the barn. Are you okay? He asked. I think so, Lisa said. I just broke up with my fiancé and I have no idea what I'm going to do with my life, but yeah, I think I'm okay. Jake smiled. Sometimes the scariest decisions are the ones that feel the most right. Lisa looked at him, this man who had appeared in her life like a guardian angel when she needed him most. Can I ask you something? Anything. Do you think I'm crazy for staying here instead of going back to my old life? Jake was quiet for a moment. I think you're brave, he said finally, and I think you deserve to be with someone who appreciates how special you are. Lisa felt tears in her eyes, but they were good tears. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The weeks that followed were like nothing Lisa had ever experienced. She had always been someone who planned everything carefully, who liked to know what was coming next. But now she was living day by day, and surprisingly she loved it. Jake had offered to let her stay at the ranch while she figured out her next steps, and Lisa had gratefully accepted. She called her school district and explained the situation, asking for extended leave. Her principal, Mrs. Williams, was understanding and told her to take all the time she needed. Sometimes life throws us curveballs, Mrs. Williams had said. The important thing is that you're safe and you're taking care of yourself. Lisa's parents had been worried at first. They had driven out to the ranch as soon as the roads were clear, expecting to find their daughter having some kind of breakdown. Instead, they found her helping Jake repair flood damage, looking healthier and happier than she had in months. I don't understand, Lisa's mother had said privately. You had a good job, a nice apartment, and David was going to give you a comfortable life. Why would you give all that up? Lisa had tried to explain that comfortable wasn't the same as happy, but she could see her parents didn't really understand. They had worked hard their whole lives to give her stability, and now she was choosing uncertainty. It was hard for them to see that sometimes uncertainty was better than being trapped in the wrong life. Every morning, Lisa woke up excited about the day ahead. She and Jake had fallen into a natural rhythm of working together around the ranch. She learned how to mend fences, how to recognize when a cow was about to give birth, and how to drive the old farm truck. Her hands got calloused and her skin got tan, and she felt stronger than she ever had before. Jake was patient with her as she learned, never making her feel stupid when she made mistakes. He had a way of teaching that made even the hardest tasks seem manageable. When she accidentally let the chickens out of their coop, he just laughed and helped her round them up. When she fell off the fence she was trying to paint, he made sure she was okay and then showed her an easier way to do it. You're getting good at this, Jake said one evening as they watched the sunset from the porch. I can't believe you'd never done farm work before, Lisa smiled. I can't believe I used to think I needed to stay inside and keep my hands clean all the time. This feels so much more real. As the days passed, Lisa found herself falling in love with ranch life. She loved the rhythm of it, the way each day brought different challenges and rewards. She loved watching the cattle graze in the fields, loved collecting eggs from the chickens, loved the way the whole world seemed to wake up with the sunrise. But more than that, she was falling in love with Jake, not in the desperate, uncertain way she had felt with David, but in a deep, peaceful way that felt as natural as breathing. Jake never pressured her or made her feel like she had to be anyone other than herself. He seemed to genuinely enjoy her company and appreciate her help around the ranch. One evening, about a month after the flood, Lisa was cooking dinner when Jake came in from the barn looking troubled. Everything okay? She asked, looking up from the stove. I got a call from my lawyer today, Jake said. About the ranch. I've been having some financial trouble and the bank is threatening to foreclose. Lisa felt her heart sink. The ranch wasn't just Jake's home, it was his whole life. How bad is it? Pretty bad, Jake admitted. I've been struggling ever since the divorce. My ex-wife got half of everything, and then we had that bad drought 2 years ago that killed most of my crops. I've been trying to catch up ever since, but it's been hard. Lisa sat down at the table beside him. What can you do? I don't know, Jake said. I've been thinking about selling some of the cattle, but that would just be delaying the inevitable. I might have to sell the whole place and find somewhere else to live. The thought of Jake losing his ranch made Lisa feel sick. This place had become home to her in a way her apartment in town never had. But more than that, she couldn't bear the thought of Jake losing something he loved so much. How much do you need? Lisa asked. Jake shook his head. I couldn't ask you to help with that. You've already done so much. I'm not asking you to ask, Lisa said. I'm asking you to tell me how much you need. Jake looked at her for a long moment. Lisa, you've already given up your old life. I can't let you give up your savings, too. What if I told you that helping you save this ranch would be the best? Think I could do with my savings? Lisa asked. What if I told you that this place feels more like home than anywhere I've ever lived? Jake's eyes softened. You don't have to do that. I know I don't have to, Lisa said. I want to. We're partners, aren't we? Partners help each other. That night, Lisa called her bank and arranged to transfer most of her savings to help Jake pay off his debts. It was scary to give up her financial security, but it also felt like the rightest thing she had ever done. The next few months were busy ones. Lisa and Jake worked together to get the ranch back on solid ground. They expanded the vegetable garden, fixed up the barn, and even started a small farmer's market stand in town to sell fresh produce and eggs. Lisa discovered she had a talent for talking to customers and keeping track of the business side of things. By winter, the ranch was thriving again. More importantly, Lisa and Jake had grown closer than ever. They spent their evenings sitting by the fire, talking about everything and nothing. Jake would tell her stories about growing up on the ranch, and Lisa would share her dreams for the future. I never thought I'd be happy living in the country, Lisa admitted one snowy evening. I always thought I needed city life to be fulfilled. What changed your mind? Jake asked. Lisa looked at him, this man who had saved her life and then helped her find herself. I realized that it's not about where you live. It's about who you live with. Jake reached over and took her hand. Lisa, I know we haven't known each other very long, but I can't imagine my life without you anymore. I can't imagine mine without you either, Lisa said, on the 1-year anniversary of the flood. Jake had a surprise for Lisa. He led her down to the spot by the creek where he had first rescued her. The water was calm now, flowing gently like it had before the storm. This is where my life really started, Jake said, getting down on one knee. This is where I found you, and this is where I want to ask you to be my wife. Lisa felt tears streaming down her face as Jake pulled out a simple ring. It wasn't fancy or expensive, but it was perfect. It was real and honest, just like their love. Yes, she whispered. Yes, of course. They had their wedding at the ranch 6 months later. It was nothing like the elaborate ceremony Lisa had originally planned with David. Instead of 150 guests, they invited just their closest family and friends. Instead of a string quartet, Jake's neighbor played guitar. Instead of expensive flowers, they decorated with wildflowers from their own fields. Lisa's parents had finally come to understand that their daughter had found something special. They could see how happy she was, how much she and Jake loved and respected each other. Even David had eventually sent a grudging congratulations, admitting that he was happier with his new girlfriend who shared his love of city life. As Lisa walked down the aisle toward Jake, she thought about how different her life had become. A year ago, she had been trapped in a relationship that was slowly suffocating her. Now she was marrying a man who encouraged her to be her best self, who supported her dreams, and who made her laugh every single day. The flood had washed away her old life, but it had also brought her to exactly where she was meant to be. Standing under the oak tree where Jake had first rescued her, promising to love each other for the rest of their lives, Lisa knew she had finally found her way home.